Life has a way of throwing storms at us. Storms we didn't expect. Storms that shake our plans, our peace, and sometimes even our faith. But hear me when I tell you today, storms don't last forever. They rage, they roar, they make noise, but they always pass. What remains is not the storm. What remains is the lesson, the wisdom, the strength you gained in the middle of it. Somebody in here needs to know God didn't call you to panic. He called you to stand steady. Because while storms pass, lessons last. And if you can stand still in the shaking, you'll walk out stronger than you went in. Oh, I feel like preaching already. Storms are seasonal, not permanent. That's a truth many of us need to carry deep in our spirit. Because when the winds of life are raging, it feels like they will never stop. When the rain is pouring, when the thunder is shaking the walls, when the lightning is striking around you, your mind starts telling you, this is it. This is the end. I will not make it through this. But the storm you are in right now is not eternal. It is not final. It is not forever. It is seasonal. Think about the natural world. No season lasts forever. Winter comes, but eventually spring breaks through. The snow melts, the flowers rise again, and the birds sing. Summer heats up, but autumn arrives to cool it down and change the colors. Storms pass because they are never designed to last. Nature itself teaches us the rhythm of life. Nothing stays the same forever. If the seasons shift in the natural, why would you believe the season you're in right now spiritually will never change? If God set boundaries for the ocean, do you not think He also set an expiration date on the storm you're facing? Sometimes we confuse the moment with the lifetime. A painful season can trick your heart into thinking it's a permanent condition. But hear me, pain is not forever. Disappointment is not forever. Loneliness is not forever. Even grief, as deep and real as it is, does not hold the power to freeze your destiny in place. It may mark you, it may shape you, but it cannot define the totality of who you are. Because storms are seasonal, not permanent. The disciples found themselves in a storm one night. They were on a boat tossed back and forth, and they thought they were going to die. Their whole world was shaking. But what did Jesus say? Be still. And the storm obeyed His voice. That storm had an end point. It had a boundary. It had an assignment, but it also had an expiration date. That's the same for you. The chaos you feel right now, the turbulence you're facing, the battles you're fighting, they have an expiration date stamped by the hand of God. You may not know when it will end, but heaven already knows. Here's the danger. When we forget storms are seasonal, we start building permanent structures in temporary places. We start making decisions as if the darkness will never lift. We talk ourselves out of dreams. We cancel assignments. We shrink our faith because we assume this pain will last forever. Don't let a season trick you into thinking it is your destiny. The storm may surround you, but it is not you. It may shake you, but it cannot erase what God has planted in you. When Joseph was thrown into the pit, it looked like his story was finished. When he was chained in the prison, it looked like he had been forgotten. But those were seasons, not his permanent reality. God was working in the background, shifting the pieces, preparing the stage. And when the time was right, Joseph moved from the prison to the palace. His storm was temporary. His assignment was permanent. Let me tell you something, the devil is a liar. He whispers to you in the middle of the storm, this is it. This is your life now. You will always struggle, always cry, always feel lost. But the devil cannot control the seasons. He cannot dictate when the sun rises. He cannot extend the night longer than God has ordained. He can roar, he can rattle, but he cannot rule. God sets the times and the seasons. God says when the storm begins and when it ends. I came to remind somebody, stop giving the storm more credit than it deserves. Stop magnifying it. Stop bowing to it. Stop living like it's eternal. Storms are loud, but they are not lasting. They are fierce, but they are not forever. They are real, but they are not permanent. You are walking through it, not into it. You are passing through, not settling in. And when the storm is over, you will still be standing. Yes, storms can be scary. Yes, they can make you feel helpless. Yes, they can leave some damage in their wake. But even after the damage, life continues. Even after the loss, healing begins. Even after the thunder quiets down, the silence comes with clarity. That's why you must remind yourself daily, this is a season and seasons shift. Look at your own life. You've survived storms before. Times when you thought you wouldn't make it. Times when you thought you couldn't breathe another day. Times when you thought you were finished. Yet here you are. That storm passed, didn't it? And so will this one. You have living proof that what feels permanent is often just passing through. Your own story testifies that God does not leave you stuck forever. The enemy wants to use the storm to paralyze you. He wants to freeze your hope, but God wants to use the storm to prepare you. The storm is temporary, but the strength you gain in the storm is eternal. The storm may end, but the resilience you build will carry you for the rest of your life. That's why the storm cannot last forever, because its only job is to form something in you, and once that purpose is complete, it has to go. So stand firm in the storm. Hold your head up. Don't let the temporary clouds blind you to the eternal promise. Seasons come and seasons go, and the storm you're in right now will not have the last word. God will. And when the skies clear, you'll look back and realize the storm was not permanent. It was a season, and seasons always shift. Lessons outlive the storm that birthed them. That means storms are not wasted. They don't just come to shake you, they come to shape you. Every storm leaves something behind, and that something is often more valuable than the comfort you lost when the storm first arrived. The rain may wash things away, the wind may strip things down, but the lessons remain, and those lessons will carry you further than the storm ever could. Think about it. When you look back on your life, you don't remember every sunny day, but you can point to the storms that changed you. You can recall the pain that made you stronger, the betrayal that taught you discernment, the loss that deepened your compassion. The storm didn't last, but the lesson it taught became a part of you forever. That's why you can't just despise the storm. You may hate what you had to endure, but if you're honest, the storm gave you wisdom you couldn't have gained any other way. God doesn't allow storms to come without purpose. When the disciples faced that storm on the sea, Jesus was teaching them something. He was showing them that his power was greater than the wind and the waves. If they hadn't faced the storm, they would have never seen him stand and speak peace to the chaos. The storm was temporary, but the lesson about his authority was eternal. They carried that revelation long after the clouds cleared. That's how God works. Storms pass, but the truth he reveals in the storm will guide you the rest of your life. You see, storms expose you. They show you what you really believe, what you really rely on, and what you really need. They strip away illusions. When the bottom falls out, when the lights go dark, you learn very quickly what is essential and what is extra. That lesson stays with you. The storm may take your job, but it leaves you with the lesson that God is your provider. The storm may break your heart, but it leaves you with the lesson that God is closer than a brother. The storm may stretch your faith, but it leaves you with the lesson that your prayers have power. And once you learn that, nobody can take it away from you. Lessons outlive storms because storms are brief moments in time, but lessons shape identity. Once you know, you can't unknow. Once you've seen God show up in the midnight hour, nobody can convince you He won't be there again. Once you've walked through fire and come out alive, you'll never again doubt your resilience. That's why storms, as painful as they are, leave behind treasures. They leave behind truths that cannot be erased. Think about Job. He lost everything: his family, his fortune, his health. It was the storm of a lifetime. But even when the storm lifted, the lessons Job carried were deeper than the riches he regained. He said, "I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes have seen you." The storm was violent, but the revelation of God's presence became permanent. That lesson outlived the pain. This is why you must shift how you see your struggle. Stop only asking, "When will this storm end?" Start asking, "What am I supposed to learn in this?" Because if you walk out of the storm with no lesson, you wasted it. But if you carry the wisdom forward, then the storm has done its work, and you will walk into the next season stronger, wiser, and more equipped. The storm may have taken something from you, but it also left something inside of you. And that something will last longer than the storm ever did. There are people listening right now who can testify. Your storm almost broke you, but it built you instead. You cried tears you thought would never stop. But out of those tears came empathy for others who are hurting. You walked through rejection that cut deep. But now you can stand tall because you learned your worth doesn't come from people's approval. You had doors slam in your face, but you discovered that God's yes is bigger than man's no. The storm passed, but the wisdom it left became the foundation of who you are today. And let me tell you something, the enemy hates that, because storms he thought would destroy you actually developed you. He thought the divorce would take your hope, but it gave you clarity. He thought the bankruptcy would crush your faith, but it taught you stewardship. He thought the sickness would steal your joy, but it made you more grateful for every breath. What was meant to break you birthed lessons that will bless you for a lifetime. That's why you can't despise small beginnings, and you can't despise painful seasons. Because every painful season carries a seed of wisdom. Every storm plants something in you that will grow long after the rain stops. If you gather the lessons, you will never come out of a storm empty-handed. So today, instead of focusing on what you lost, focus on what you learned. Instead of only seeing the destruction, look for the instruction. Instead of only remembering the thunder, recall the wisdom that was born in the silence afterward. The storm was a teacher, and the lesson is the diploma you carry for life. Storms pass, lessons last, and those lessons will guide you into doors you didn't even know existed. They will give you strength to help others, vision to avoid old traps, and faith to step into greater destiny. Don't waste the storm, harvest the lesson. Because storms are temporary, but lessons are eternal. Stability in crisis reveals true strength. Anybody can look strong when life is calm. Anybody can stand tall when the bills are paid, the body is healthy, and the relationships are flowing smoothly. It doesn't take much to smile in the sunshine. But the real measure of strength is not how you act when everything is going your way. It's how you stand when the bottom falls out. Crisis is the great revealer. It shows whether your strength was a pose or a reality. And I came to tell you today that God will let you walk through moments of crisis, not to destroy you, but to prove the strength He has already built inside of you. Have you noticed that a tree doesn't reveal how deep its roots are until the storm comes? You can admire its height, its beauty, its fruit, but you don't know its real stability until the wind starts shaking it. When the wind howls and the storm rages, some trees fall because their roots were shallow, but others stand because their roots were deep. Stability in the crisis is not about how you look. It's about how you're rooted. It's about what you're connected to, what you're grounded in. And when your life is anchored in God, the crisis can blow, but you will not break. Crisis does not create strength. It reveals it. Think about the disciples in the storm. They panicked. They thought the boat would sink. But Jesus, He was asleep. That's stability in the middle of chaos. His calmness revealed His strength. And when they woke Him up, His words carried the same stability. Peace, be still. The storm outside bowed to the stability within Him. That's the kind of strength God wants to build in you. The kind that doesn't crumble when everything around you is falling apart. Sometimes God allows the shaking just to show you how strong you really are. You thought you couldn't handle it. You thought you'd break, but here you are. Crisis came, but you didn't lose your mind. Trouble came, but you kept walking. Pain came, but you found your voice to pray anyway. That is stability. That is strength. And you wouldn't have known it if the crisis hadn't tested you. The enemy wants to use crisis to convince you that you are weak. But God uses crisis to reveal that you are stronger than you think. Look back at what you've survived. Betrayals that should have crushed you, losses that should have broken you, challenges that should have paralyzed you. But you are still standing. And not only are you standing, but you are wiser, tougher, and more resilient than before. That's strength. Not the absence of shaking, but the ability to remain steady while everything shakes around you. Daniel stood in the lion's den. Crisis all around, but stability inside. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood in the fiery furnace. Crisis all around, but stability inside. Paul and Silas sang in prison at midnight. Crisis all around, but stability inside. And every single time, that stability revealed the real strength of their faith. Crisis doesn't define you. It reveals you. That's why the enemy hates stability. He doesn't just want to send storms, he wants to see you panic. Because panic means you forgot who you are and whose you are. Panic means you gave the storm more power than your God. But stability says, I may be surrounded, but I'm not shaken. I may be hurting, but I'm not hopeless. I may be pressed, but I'm not crushed. Stability is strength on display. And hear me, stability doesn't mean you don't feel the storm. It doesn't mean you don't cry or ache. It doesn't mean you don't question. It means that in spite of the storm, you don't give up. It means you refuse to let temporary chaos dictate eternal truth. It means you keep walking by faith when sight makes no sense. That's stability. And that's what reveals the strength God has been building in you all along. Life has a way of putting you in pressure cookers. Suddenly, the crisis shows up unannounced. A phone call changes everything. A doctor's report rattles your peace. A betrayal cuts deep. A loss shakes you to your core. And in those moments, you discover whether your foundation was sand or rock. Jesus said it best, the rain falls, The floods rise, the winds blow, but the house built on the rock stands. The one on sand collapses. Stability in the storm reveals the strength of the foundation. That's why you must build your life on Christ, not comfort, because comfort shifts, but Christ stands. Think about it, some of the strongest people you know are not the ones who've had it easy, but the ones who've walked through fire and didn't burn up. The ones who've been through storms and didn't drown. Their stability in crisis is what makes you admire them, not their ease in calm waters. Crisis doesn't destroy true strength. It proves it. And let me encourage you, the fact that you are still here means you are stronger than you realize. You might feel weak, but weakness doesn't disqualify you. In fact, God said His strength is made perfect in weakness. That means when you're at your lowest, His power is at its highest. Stability isn't about your ability alone, it's about your dependence on His strength flowing through you. That's why you didn't break. That's why you didn't quit. It wasn't just you. It was Him holding you steady in the storm. So when the next crisis comes, and it will, don't be afraid. Remember what you've already survived. Remember the strength that was revealed the last time. Remember the God who anchored you before will anchor you again. Stability in crisis is not just about surviving. It's about testifying. It's about showing the world that greater is He who is in you than he who is in the world. Storms will come. Crises will shake. But your stability in the midst of it all is proof that you are rooted, grounded, and unshakable in Christ. Let the winds blow. Let the waves rise. When you remain steady, your true strength is revealed, and that strength will carry you into the destiny God has prepared. Faith is tested most when comfort is absent. It is easy to believe when everything is lining up. It is easy to praise when the money is flowing, the family is smiling, and your health is strong. It doesn't take deep faith to lift your hands in blessing when your life feels blessed. But the real test of faith is when comfort has been stripped away, when the props are removed, when the cushions are gone, when you can't see how, when you don't feel why, when you don't know when. That's when faith stops being theory and becomes reality. Abraham had faith while he was in the comfort of his father's house, but it wasn't until God said, "Leave your country, your kindred, and go to a land I will show you," that his faith was really tested. Leave what you know. Leave what feels safe. Leave your comfort zone and walk into uncertainty. That is when faith steps into the spotlight. Because faith cannot be proven in the presence of comfort, it shines brightest in the absence of it. Israel shouted in the promised land, but their faith was tested in the wilderness. Job praised God with his abundance, but his faith was tested when he lost it all. Peter boasted about following Jesus anywhere, but his faith was tested in the courtyard when fear surrounded him. Faith does not reveal its depth when life is easy. Faith is proven when life is hard. And that's where some of you are right now. God has you in a season where comfort has been stripped away, not because He is cruel, but because He is cultivating real faith in you. You prayed for deeper faith, didn't you? You asked God to make you stronger, didn't you? Then He answered by pulling away the cushions, because as long as you are leaning on comfort, you are not leaning fully on Him. Faith begins where your control ends, and control ends when comfort is gone. It's one thing to believe God when the plan makes sense. It's another thing to believe Him when the plan makes no sense at all. That's why faith is often called the evidence of things not seen. Comfort is about what you can see, touch, and measure. Faith is about what you can't see but still trust. Comfort says, I know how it will work out. Faith says, I don't see it, but I still trust God will do it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had no comfort when they stood before the fiery furnace. They had no guarantees of survival, but they had faith. Even if he does not deliver us, we will not bow. That is faith in the absence of comfort. Daniel in the lion's den had no comfortable exit plan. Paul and Silas in prison had no comfortable circumstances. But what did they do? They sang at midnight. That's faith in its purest form. Sometimes God strips away comfort so you will learn that your faith is not in the job, not in the bank account, not in the relationship, not in the doctor's report, but in Him alone. Because as long as you depend on the comfort of things, you will not fully depend on the Creator of all things. Comfort is nice, but it is also deceptive. It can lull you into thinking you are safe because of what you have, when your true safety is always in who you have. When you are tested in the absence of comfort, you discover whether your faith is situational or foundational. Situational faith works only when life is smooth. Foundational faith works even when the ground shakes. Situational faith says, I believe as long as I feel good. Foundational faith says, I believe though He slay me, yet will I trust Him. That's why God sometimes shakes your comfort, because He wants to shift you from situational faith to foundational faith. Think about it. You've grown more in seasons of discomfort than you ever did in ease. The times you prayed the hardest, the times you worshiped the deepest, the times you leaned on God the strongest, it wasn't when everything was fine. It was when comfort was gone. Discomfort pushed you into deeper dependence. Discomfort sharpened your focus. Discomfort turned shallow belief into unshakable conviction. And here's the truth: comfort is temporary anyway. Jobs change, relationships shift, health fluctuates, circumstances turn. If your faith is tied to comfort, it will always be unstable. But if your faith is tied to God, it will remain unshaken no matter how unstable life feels. That's why God weans us off comfort, so our faith can mature. Babies need comfort for every step. Adults walk by conviction, not convenience. When Jesus hung on the cross, stripped of all comfort, that was the ultimate test of faith. And in the absence of comfort, the greatest act of salvation was accomplished. If the cross had been comfortable, it wouldn't have been the cross. If your journey was comfortable, it wouldn't require faith. The absence of comfort doesn't mean the absence of God. In fact, it often means He is closer than ever, carrying you through what you cannot carry on your own. So the next time you find yourself in a season where the cushions are gone, don't panic. Don't assume God has abandoned you. Recognize that your faith is being tested, and what is tested is proven. Gold is not proven in the showroom. It is proven in the fire. And your faith, the Bible says, is more precious than gold. If it takes fire to prove it, then so be it. Because the faith that is tested in fire will stand forever. Faith is tested most when comfort is absent. That means your current struggle is not a sign of weakness. It is the stage where your faith is being revealed. Your tears do not mean you lack faith. Your questions do not mean you lack faith. The fact that you are still holding on, still pressing forward, still whispering prayers in the dark, that is faith. And that faith, tested without comfort, will carry you into victories you could never achieve in ease. So don't despise the season of discomfort. Don't curse the absence of comfort. Thank God that He loves you enough to build a faith in you that doesn't depend on things but on Him. Because when all else fails, he will still stand. And when your comfort is gone, your faith will rise. And that's when you will discover how strong you truly are. God uses storms as classrooms, not prisons. That means when the storm comes, it doesn't come to lock you up. It comes to teach you something. A prison confines you. It keeps you stuck. It makes you feel trapped with no way out. But a classroom develops you. It expands you. It teaches you lessons that prepare you for what's next. The same storm that looks like it came to destroy, you may have actually come to instruct you. It is not your prison. It is your teacher. So many times we treat storms like punishments. We ask, God, why are you doing this to me? Why am I stuck in this? Why am I trapped here? But you are not trapped. You are being trained. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. God is not locking you away. He is unlocking something within you. And sometimes the only environment where that lesson can be taught is in the middle of a storm. Think about it. The disciples learned more about who Jesus was in storms than in calm waters. When the sea was calm, they saw him as a teacher. When the storm raged and he calmed the waves, they saw him as Lord over creation. The storm became the classroom that revealed his identity. They would have never learned that lesson without the storm. You cannot learn deep lessons in shallow places. The storm pulls you into deeper waters so God can reveal what you didn't know you needed to see. Classrooms are uncomfortable. Nobody says, I love exams, I love tests, I love being stretched. No, we prefer recess to the lecture. We prefer comfort to challenge. But growth doesn't happen in ease. Growth happens in instruction, in testing, in stretching. That's why God allows storms. Because he is not content with you just staying where you are. He wants you stronger. He wants you wiser. He wants you prepared. And the storm is his classroom. Look at Jonah. He ran from God and the storm chased him down. The storm was not his prison. It was his classroom. It taught him obedience. It taught him that you can't run from the call of God. It taught him that your disobedience doesn't just affect you. It endangers everyone on the ship. That storm was a lesson, and Jonah came out of it with a revelation he would have never had if he stayed in comfort. Look at Paul on the ship to Rome. The storm tore the vessel apart, but it didn't kill him. Why? Because the storm was never meant to imprison him. It was meant to position him. That storm carried him to Malta, where miracles were waiting. Sometimes storms redirect you. They push you off the path you thought you were on so God can land you exactly where you need to be. The storm becomes a detour into destiny. That's a classroom, not a prison. Job's storm looked like punishment, but it was instruction. In the end, Job learned more about God than he ever knew in his days of comfort. He said, I had heard of you, but now I have seen you. The storm expanded his vision. It deepened his faith. It stripped him of false securities and grounded him in God's reality. The prison would have broken him. The classroom built him. And here's the difference: a prison steals your hope, but a classroom shapes your hope. A prison shuts the door, but a classroom opens your eyes. A prison leaves you weaker, but a classroom makes you stronger. God never wastes a storm. He always uses it to write something on the chalkboard of your soul. If you stop seeing storms as cages and start seeing them as classrooms, you will stop asking, why me? And start asking, what are you teaching me? Every storm has a lesson. Some storms teach patience. Some storms teach endurance. Some storms teach humility. Some storms teach discernment. Some storms teach faith in ways no sermon ever could. You can hear about trust on Sunday morning, but it's the storm on Monday night that teaches you to live it. The storm makes the lesson real, and when you walk out of that storm, you carry the diploma of survival. You walk out with wisdom. You walk out with resilience. You walk out with testimonies that can help somebody else who's just stepping into their storm. The storm was never about keeping you locked away. It was about equipping you for the next assignment. You were not trapped, you were trained. So don't waste your storm. Don't sit in it bitter. Don't sit in it hopeless. Don't sit in it like a prisoner waiting for parole. Sit in it like a student waiting for revelation. Take notes. Gather wisdom. Learn the lesson, because once the lesson is complete, the storm will pass. Classrooms don't last forever. Semesters end. Tests finish. The bell rings. And when it does, you graduate into another level of strength. The devil wants you to see the storm as a prison. He wants you to believe you're stuck, abandoned, forgotten. But God wants you to see it as a classroom. The storm may be loud, but it's speaking something to you. The storm may be dark, but it's showing you light you've never seen before. The storm may be shaking you, but it's shaking loose everything that doesn't belong so you can step into your next season lighter and freer. Storms are classrooms, not prisons. That means you're not stuck, you're learning. You're not defeated, you're developing. You're not chained, you're being changed. And when you come out, you will not come out empty. You will come out with wisdom, with clarity, with vision, with strength. You will come out ready for the next chapter, because the storm taught you what calm seas never could. So thank God for the classroom. Thank Him that He loves you enough not to leave you uneducated in the school of faith. Thank Him that He trusts you enough to enroll you in the kind of class that shapes champions. Because one day, you will look back and realize that the storm you thought was your prison was really your graduation. And the diploma it gave you will carry you for the rest of your life. Survival is temporary, but growth is eternal. There is a difference between just making it through and being transformed by what you went through. Too many of us settle for survival. We crawl out of storms battered and bruised, but unchanged. We say, "At least I made it." But the truth is, God did not bring you through just so you could say you survived. He brought you through so you could say, "I grew." Because survival only gets you out, but growth takes you forward. Think about Israel in the wilderness. They survived 40 years of wandering. Every day, manna fell, water flowed, enemies were defeated. They survived, but many of them never grew. They stayed stuck in cycles of complaining, murmuring, and disobedience. Survival alone wasn't enough to get them into the promised land. Joshua and Caleb entered, not just because they survived the wilderness, but because they grew in faith through it. Survival is short-term. Growth is what lasts. That's why some people keep facing the same storms over and over again. Because they survived but never grew. The test keeps repeating until you learn the lesson. Survival says, "I got out." Growth says, "I came out stronger, wiser, deeper, more like Christ." Survival ends when the storm ends. Growth keeps working in you long after the clouds have cleared. Job survived his trial, but more importantly, he grew. He walked out not only with restored blessings, but with a deeper revelation of who God is. That growth was eternal. Paul survived shipwrecks, beatings, prisons. But he didn't just survive. He grew to the point where he could write letters that still shape the faith of millions today. That growth outlived his survival. Survival focuses on the event. Growth focuses on the outcome. Survival says, "I can't wait until this is over." Growth says, when this is over, I won't be the same. Survival is reactive. It's about escaping. Growth is proactive. It's about becoming. And God's goal for you is never just survival. His goal is transformation. He wants you to step out of the storm not just alive, but alive with a new vision, alive with new wisdom, alive with new strength. This is why Paul could say, we glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character. Survival doesn't produce that, growth does. Storms are not just to be endured, they are to be engaged. If you survive without growth, you wasted the storm. If you survive and grow, the storm becomes the soil for your destiny. Survival is about breath. Growth is about purpose. Survival says, I lived another day. Growth says, now I know why I'm living. And some of you need to hear this. Stop aiming just to survive. Aim to grow. Stop saying, if I can just get through this. Start saying, when I come through this, I will be changed. Because the victory is not just that you made it out, it's that you came out different. Jesus showed this in the resurrection. The cross was survival. He endured the nails, the suffering, the shame. But the resurrection was growth. Power released, victory secured, eternal change made possible for all of us. If he had only survived the crucifixion, it would have been temporary. But because he rose in power, the growth was eternal. That's the difference. Even in your own life, think about what has stayed with you. Not the storms themselves, they passed. Not the pain itself, it eventually eased. What stayed was the growth. The lessons you carry today, the strength you walk in now, the resilience that marks you. That's eternal. The storm is a memory, but the growth is your reality. That's why God keeps pressing you not just to endure, but to expand. Don't waste your survival. Let it become growth. And let's be honest, sometimes survival feels like enough. Sometimes you're so tired, so drained, you say, if I can just breathe through this day, that's all I can do. And yes, there are moments where survival is victory. But don't stop there. Once the storm passes, reflect on what it taught you, what it shaped in you, what it stripped away from you. That reflection is where survival turns into growth. The enemy wants you to stop at survival. He wants you to limp out of battle so exhausted, you don't see the treasure you picked up along the way. But God says, I don't just want you alive. I want you abundant. I don't just want you surviving. I want you thriving. I don't just want you making it. I want you multiplying. Survival is for a moment, but growth echoes through eternity. Look at the testimony of people who inspire you most. They are not just survivors. They are growers. They didn't just walk out of hardship. They walked out with wisdom. They didn't just endure loss. They walked out with deeper compassion. They didn't just survive storms. They walked out with stronger faith. That's why their stories live on, because growth is eternal. So the next time life hits you hard, don't just ask God to let you survive it. Ask Him to let you grow through it. Say, Lord, don't just get me out. Get something out of me. Don't just let me escape. Let me expand. Don't just keep me alive. Make me alive in a new way. Because that's the prayer that turns storms into stepping stones. Survival is temporary, but growth is eternal. One fades, the other remains. One gets you through the night, the other shapes you for a lifetime. Don't settle for survival, reach for growth. Because when the storm is over, you don't want to just say, I made it. You want to say, I became. Storms are inevitable, but they are never eternal. They come in seasons, they come in waves, but they always pass. And when they pass, they leave behind the lessons that shape us forever. The question is not whether storms will come. The question is what will remain in you after they're gone. Will you panic, or will you stay steady? Will you merely survive, or will you grow? Because storms are classrooms, not prisons. They are the fire that refines, the shaking that reveals, the winds that strip away what you don't need, so the roots of your faith can go deeper. Somebody under the sound of my voice today needs to stop fearing the storm and start embracing the lesson. Because the storm is not designed to destroy you. It's designed to develop you. And when you walk out of it, you won't just be a survivor, you'll be a testimony. You'll be evidence that storms pass, but the strength, the wisdom, the faith, the growth, they last forever.